Welcome to Fintech Family Hour. This is Zach Anderson Pettit, U.S. Content Director at Money 2020 by day and your host by night. Fintech Family Hour is now on YouTube. Go check it out and subscribe. This episode is a special one. We have three of my favorite people in the world of fintech on the pod to discuss the ins, the outs, and what really happens behind the scenes of comms and PR in the world of fintech and beyond. They all introduced themselves during the episode, so I won't be redundant and do that here. There's a whole story as to how we got to where we got to recording this episode in Current's office, Spotify's old office. It's a fascinating thing. Just keep listening. You'll see it is a special one. Strap in. This episode is brought to you by Skipify. Go to skipify.com to learn more. Without further ado, here's the Real Housewives of Fintech. All right, welcome to Fintech Family Hour. We have three wild humans here, and we do not have Emily from 6 Eastern, but Emily, we love you, and we wish you the best. No, I'm just kidding. That got really dark there, didn't it? So I will have the three of you introduce yourselves in a minute, but this whole thing started back leading up to Money 2020. I, in my role, have an unbelievable amount of conversations with PR folks, with comms folks, with agencies, and the three of you plus Emily, again, shouts to Emily, are not because many other people listen to this, not my absolute favorites. I have other favorites for the record, but a few of my favorites. Yes. And
You've been lying to us this whole time, Zach.
Always. That's what I do. So I wanted to have a conversation at Money 2020 last October about the ins and outs of what your jobs actually encompass, what it's like to build a brand in fintech, what it's like to build a brand or grow a brand in fintech, what it's like to come into fintech and try and build a brand when you've maybe been in the travel space or something like that, right? Or at least perceived to be there. So there's all these different pieces, even to a good way to pitch versus a bad way to pitch. And also I just fucking love hanging out with all of you. So I died, as you all are very aware. I just full on died the night before we were supposed to do this in Vegas. Did not answer the phone, and you guys just had to go on stage and do that whole thing without me when we had the Real Housewives of Fintech. And there was no, what's the guy's name? The dude involved in Housewives?
Oh, Andy Cohen.
Andy Cohen. There was no Andy Cohen. Thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome.
And I left you Andy Cohen-less. And I basically have no other Real Housewives references, so I'm officially tapped out there, but that is going to be the name of this episode because that was the name of the actual session of the show. And I'm going to shut the fuck up for a minute because I think I've set the stage. So let's start with introductions, and also what was it like for all of you to do that without me? We'll come to that after, but let's start with introductions, and we'll do Kelly first.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Soderlund. I am the head of global communications at Navan, formerly Trip Actions. We are a $9.2 billion travel and expense software management company. And how is it like to do it without you? I think that, we're talking a little bit about comms, and part of the job of being a PR person or a comms person is the ability to be able to pivot quickly and think on your feet.
So it's fine.
For us, we are usually the one who are navigating this kind of stuff. We're putting together the talk track. We're doing all of the ins and outs of the setting this up. So for us to be able, if we have to pivot very quickly and change things, it happens literally all the time. So for us, I feel like it was kind of second nature. As much as we missed you, we missed our Andy. We're competent, I think, enough, hopefully, at our jobs to be able to take it and just wing it.
For the record, I heard it went great.
Oh,
so
well, then great.
Yeah, I heard it went awesome.
Did you hear that from us?
Awesome. No. I think most of what I heard from you guys is, "Are you okay?"
We were looking for you. Yeah. We were worried.
When somebody is sick in Vegas, nobody has too many questions.
But it wasn't that. It wasn't. It was food. It was legitimately food poisoning.
What did we call it? We're I think he's got the Las Vegas flu.
Yeah. I wish I was dumb enough
possible,
to just drink myself on the job into that much of a stupor, but it was a stupid little fucking shrimp roll that I ate, and I had two. I drank, but it was my first time drinking the whole show, and I drank 2 drinks.
Two times how many?
You gotta stay away from the buffet. Yeah.
Still not fully
Stop with your
believing it.
multiplication. What? You don't believe me? All right, we'll get to you in a minute, Meg. Erin, who are you?
Hi, everybody. So I don't know how I follow that. Erin Bruehl. I'm VP of Communications at Current. We're a consumer fintech based here in New York.
Thank you for
5
hosting
million
us.
members. Yeah, we're actually here in our office in Current. We're here in Chelsea, and some of our partners that we have this podcast studio here in our office are very kind enough to our partners to let us borrow it for the afternoon's recording. So happy to have you guys. I've been at Current. I was an employee 32, very proudly, early stage. So if you're listening in fintech, you probably have heard from me at some point. I've been here, almost 5 years. Love it. Been quite a journey talking about early stage to where we are now. If you're not familiar with Current, then maybe I'm not so great at my job. But we offer
the audience.
It's just that we offer mobile financial services for our members. Paychecks up to 2 days early, fee-free overdraft, liquidity solutions, credit building, etc. And
if my audience doesn't know who Current is, then I'm fucking up.
Then I feel like and I have to explain when people are like, "What's Current?" I'm like, "Oh," and they're like, "What do you do there?" I'm like, "Well, I'm head of communications."
So it's great that you haven't heard of it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and then it was a good. I think we all had a great time. We missed you, or we improvised. Emily was our kind of our moderator on the panel. It was on the panel, but we had, especially for the last day of the conference, I thought we had a pretty great crowd. I will say, I'll be honest, I'm not sure I would have still been there on Wednesday otherwise. So I fully respect people who are like, I'm done with Vegas. It's been a long time. 3 days is enough. I'm dead. I'm going to go home. So appreciate everyone who stuck around for it.
But I think to your point, though, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, is that I think that it felt like there was a good audience a little bit because it's germane to the conversation that we're having right now is kind of what is the role of comms and how does comms operate in a world where everybody is going direct channels or trying, there's the founder influencer now and people are trying to find a way to maybe bypass traditional media or figure out where their audience is and figure out how am I supposed to actually speak to that audience and how comms actually, or what people consider traditional PR, actually how that plays into those strategies.
100%. Yeah. The Wednesday itself is pivoting completely to marketing, basically from now. Marketing, comms, PR, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, can explain the multitudes that is your life. Who are
Hi,
you,
everyone. Meg Stinson here, one of the co-founders of CMAND. We are an early stage partner for venture-backed startups. My co-founder, Chelsea Allison, and I started CMAND after being the first heads of comms and marketing at Plaid. We joined there when folks were wondering if we were making Plaid shirts. Chelsea was probably employee 20-something. And
y'all did good.
And I was 30 or 40. I started my career at JP Morgan, then was at a few different banks and was like, let me get some skin in the game. I'll never be able to actually bank here. So this is, I got to take myself from my 4th floor walk up in New York and head to the 1-bedroom apartment in SF. So big moves across the country there. It was just a quick 8 years ago. So
that's hilarious. So one of the things that y'all don't know about that Wednesday morning when I died was that inside of the computer system, speaking of Plaid, I share a pretty close name with an individual.
Yes, you do.
That happened to be in the system because there was just a fat finger or whatever. So according to the system, there was going to be you three, Emily, and Zach Perret.
Oh, he would have loved that.
Yeah.
So no wonder we got a big audience.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
It wasn't that on the website. It was that on the back end. It was that on the back end system.
He saw that and then got food poisoning.
My stage manager called me, Mickey, who was a guest on the podcast recently, and actually we told this story on the podcast, I think, a couple months ago. And he was like, "What is it you, Zach, or is it the others? What is happening here?" And I was literally on the floor of the bathroom, dying. And I was like, "Did you?" And I actually made fun of him in the moment. I was like, "Did you think that I was going to have Zach Perret moderate at this was just for me to have fun with my friends, right?"
but allegedly not your best friends, but some of them.
It's alleged at this point, Meg.
Yeah.
Like, don't hold me to anything I say,
You know, it was Vegas, so you never know.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Apparently what happens there doesn't stay there based on the fact that we're having this podcast.
I'm getting closer to believing you, though, with the food poisoning.
Okay.
story.
What do we have to do here? What do we have to
Pinky swear. I don't know. But
I mean, we got pinkies.
all right.
All right. We're going to move on from that. Okay. So let's get into what we were going to talk about, which is building brands, pitching, that whole thing. So I think based on a conversation I was having with Erin on the way over, where I want to start, and we can really just like go whatever direction with this, but where I want to start is the pitching piece, because obviously with a podcast and Fintech's like not that big, right? So you all are kind of forced to pitch the same people over and over and over again. And it's kind of I would think a painful thing, honestly, like trying to be a little empathetic to that. It seems like it wouldn't be easy. And I see a lot of the same people in my inbox over and over and over again. And candidly, some of those emails I don't answer. So I don't know. I'm not starting with this particular person or anything, but like, what does a good pitch look like? What does a bad pitch look like? Like, what are the pitfalls here?
Well, I'll start because Zach and I we shared an Uber over from the Empire of Fintech conference today here in New York. Shout out John. Thanks for another great years John. Always. And seeing all of our Fintech friends, as Zach always says, like the Fintech family. So
it is. Welcome to Fintech family. Our sponsored by Skipify. Yeah. And in this case, thank you, Current.
Yeah, no worries. We're here for it. So speaking of that, I would say like the most important thing is make sure you have a good story to tell. You know,
we did just talk about that.
You know,
specifically, you're right.
Specifically, like that's generally like if you're pitching somebody, like, you know, reporters, they also get a lot of emails, right? Like we know they do. The same way Zach gets a ton of emails, like, and even if you're a young reporter, like the truth of the matter is like you've been through some sort of training. You get a sense, like, you know what your editor's looking for.
Yeah.
You know, you can sniff out what's a great story and what's like a sort of, quite frankly, desperate PR person of like, oh my gosh, we have to get some coverage. So I think like number one, you have to believe in what you're pitching. You know, like for me, it's kind of second nature because, you know, like everyone who's ever talked to me knows how much I love working at Current and like, you know, truly believe in our mission and that we're doing good things to like help people. And, you know, Zach or anyone who's ever talked to me, a reporter, knows that like, you know, I think Zach called me like one of his, was it you? Someone called, oh no, I'm sorry. It was, shout out to a Fintech friend, Jason Mikula, called me one of his favorite no bullshit. Like, we can say that, and this is the family podcast, right? Like,
I think I've said fuck a couple times already. You're good to go.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it was just because it says the word family. And
it was like
family content.
It was like one of my favorite compliments because I was like, great. Everyone knows, like, if I'm going to come talk to you, like, that's just like, there's a good story here to tell and there's something unique. So I think like that's just kind of a good pitch of starting there. Like, you know, certainly like reporters are reading their emails. If they're not getting back to you after like maybe a second follow-up, because hey, you know, people are busy and have lives. I was telling Zach a story of somebody who was like hounding me because I didn't get back to them during Money 2020 when I had a torn quad and I was in a leg brace. We'd been on like 2 dates, by the way. So and I was like, hey, by the way, I'm working 15 hours a day. I can't walk. So no, getting back to you is not my priority. He's like, oh, I'm really sorry. So like reporters have lives. That same kind of thing might have happened to them too. But other than that, like assume that like you don't have a strong enough story.
Yeah. So being like you two being inside of an organization, right? Like I know the two of you believe deeply in the mission of your company and like get out of bed every day because you believe in the mission of your company. Meg, you have a different situation where like you are I know you and like you're a very mission driven person, but you have like this person you have to serve, this person you have like a multitude of groups that you're kind of responsible for pitching and putting out there. How true is that for you with every single one of your clients versus like sometimes you just got to do the thing?
Oof.
Well, that's a good start.
Well, you've got 3 of us in here that are all no BS. So I think
we can also, we can edit out what we need to at the end of this. So just have fun, and then we will take out anything that your comp lines or you guys are going to be the ones reviewing it. Let's be real. So.
No, I always just ask for forgiveness.
Oh, there you go.
For anything that I do, I'm like, I approve.
Yeah.
No, this is not a hard one for me to answer. I give very strong feedback. I think from being inside a team, I'm like, that's not going to do it. We need more ingredients. We've got to go back. We've got to find some stuff. I do not, and reporter contacts are super important in this game. So you don't want to send weak stuff. I do not want my team to send weak stuff. I get embarrassed with that. If I don't want to go just saying like, do you want to write a profile? I mean, like bring them something good. There are shops out there who are like, we should go get a profile. And it's like, please, do you want to interview this founder? It's like, what craft that? Like, figure out what's new. The news part of news is key to it. That's, you know,
wow, I'm an idiot. I've never thought of that.
Yeah, super important.
By like definition.
Really dumb.
But
Never clicked for me. This episode of Fintech Family Hour is brought to you by Skipify. You'll get to hear much more about Skipify in the coming months here on Fintech Family Hour and why they've caught the attention of some of the smartest leaders in payments. Their CEO, Rith Martin, will be joining us on our next episode. Not this one, but wait a week. Here he comes, live from New York Fintech Week. I promise you that one is a treat and one of the more unique episodes I've ever done. Standing out on a pier, stretching, trying to make sure our backs don't hurt. It was a good time. But if you're not familiar with Skipify, it's a next generation digital wallet that connects financial institutions with merchants and shoppers at the moment of purchase for the first time, allowing for a friction-free shopping experience for cardholders wherever they shop. Skipify's connected wallet, integrated at the merchant level, is used by banks to customize the shopper journey with points offers, merchant rewards, and alternative payment methods. With Skipify, banks are able to increase their share of wallet and authorize up to 99%. Hold on, my voice can get higher. 99% of transactions without any increase in fraud. You heard that right, folks. With financial institution partners like Amex, Synchrony, and most recently, Visa, this fintech is well on its way to checkout domination. That's right, I said it. To learn more and get personalized demo of Skipify's connected wallet, go to skipify.com.
You don't have to know everything in fintech, but get smart at, play that ball forward, go really, really deep. That's what reporters want to like. They want help seeing what's next. They don't want links to 10 other articles that have already been written by their peers. They want to know, okay, here's like what people are reporting on, like what's 2 weeks from now, what's that story and who will help make that story smart. And also it's a sort of a bartering. You've got to give to get. So like, how can you give a few things before you're asking for, focus on, the founder that you're representing? But we have tough love. Like, I think the tough conversations up front make things really helpful, because otherwise I do not like lists of 100. If your comms agency is giving you a list of 100 targets, they're not doing the work. That's too much. When I was back at banks, I was getting, these are our top 150 and 150 for Jeez. What? We're like 4 articles would matter here. Like if you get 20 and they don't move the needle at all, like what are we doing? Like, let's home in on what's really important. And also just work with people who are smart writers who can put together interesting pitches. I also am a big fan of brevity. So I'm like, ooh, those long pitches are tough.
Too much.
Yeah. So I'm like, what I would like to see is just sort of the TLDR on things and know your stuff. So I think that's but we give strong feedback all the time and like to sort of put together a strategy, which is like, you're not always profile hunting. So you're not always just out there pitching, sort of being like, focus on me. Sometimes it's giving info to the ecosystem, and other times it's time to angle in for one.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add, Kelly, since I've just left you out?
That's okay.
I'm such an asshole. I'm sorry. I love you.
I'm used to it. I'm a middle child.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding. I always have to fight for my seat. Just kidding. No, I actually feel very strongly about this part of our job, right? Because I think it's also one of the most vital. So there's various things, and I approach pitching differently depending on, I'm a big believer, I used to be a journalist, I'm a big believer in story and structure are the structure determines the story. The story determines the structure of how that piece looks. And that means like, how are we going to market? What is the story that we're telling, right? If it's a feature, like that's the long tail, right? That's going to take some time. You're working on it. And like, you're pitching something different than you're pitching product news, or you're pitching a corporate announcement, or how you're approaching that. But for me, my biggest thing is because I come from the world of journalism, as does Erin.
Yep, me too. Sports journalism, totally natural path to fintech.
Like, I
kind of weirdly, but yeah.
And I never had the agency background. When I was younger, it made me feel very there was a moment there where I was feeling insecure. Like maybe I just didn't have training. Right. But I was getting good results. And so nothing through the course of my career kind of said like, you need to do it this particular agency-led way. And what I found very early on was that if I could position myself as an asset to reporters instead of a burden to reporters, it makes a huge difference in how they react, right?
Yeah.
So what do I offer that others don't? And to be honest, the vast majority of my pitches at this particular juncture in my career are like a Twitter DM or a text message like, hey, I got something for you. Because I have that relationship with the reporter and I know what they're interested in and I know whether or not it'll be worth their time to even look at it or not. And if they're not interested in it, then that's okay. We'll come back to them later. It's certainly not a personal thing. There could be a number of different things that are going on. But then you work on it and it's a relationship and it's a continual dialogue. It is not, I'm going to just deluge you with a bunch of stuff and then get pissed off because you're not responding to me. And then why aren't you covering my company?
Yeah.
It's not that. It's a long-term play here where you're establishing media relations. How can I be an asset to you? Beyond that, I agree very much. A TLDR, there's a certain type of writing, right? That shows you, here's how we're going to bullet something. If we're going to bold something, it's going to be like one word, like train yourself to read quickly and what are the key things that you're going to pick out. Think about how many pitches a reporter is seeing in a day and what are the things that they're going to see as they're scanning, right? So that's a big one too. What are the top line items that they are actually going to pay attention to? And then the other thing that I was going to say as well is like, what I often find is, not understanding the three things that really make news. You said it, news, right? But like I always look for 3 ingredients. If you get 2 out of the 3, it's great, right? And then if you get 3, I think that leads to any kind of virality I've ever had with any kind of stories. It's always had all 3. And is it timely? Is it timely? Is there a conversation that's going on about a particular subject?
Yeah.
2, is it news? Is it news? Are you bringing something new to the conversation? And then the last part, which is hard, at least in the kind of sales or the kind of industry that I'm in, which is more heavily B2B, is what's the emotional hook? There needs to, for it to be really effective, a reader has to feel like they're connecting with a story or a problem. They have to say yeah, that was me. I hated doing expense reports, right? I used to spend 8 hours on the weekends,
oh my God,
once
I
every 3 months.
I used to have to tape my receipts to paper when I worked at the USDA.
No. And
and then photocopy them and staple the sheets together.
This is why I don't do expense reports.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No, and that's why
I just lose money.
Zach
it's crazy.
how old are you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not true.
Okay, that was maybe not this decade. Okay.
Zach, enjoy being an independent contractor for as long as you possibly can. Okay. I'm glad that you have that freedom.
I'm just validating the business model.
I'm just too lazy. Our expense system sucks so much in Money 2020 that I'm okay saying that.
I know we got to get you guys as customers. Really.
I would love that. I would love that. But the large publicly traded organization is not going to move that. I mean, we could talk about that over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Navan is awesome. We're clients at Current as well. I would say it makes my life significantly easier.
Yeah. The one time I got to use Navan for that trip to San Francisco was the smoothest experience I've ever had with anything B2B related in the world of travel. By a
Are we on a
fucking long
commercial
shot.
break right now?
I know. This
I
is
mean,
great.
it's just
Keep talking. Megan,
based on I spent $250 on Ubers yesterday. I calculated it last night, just going thing to thing to thing to thing, just number of podcasts I had. $250 on Ubers. I'm going to expense probably 0 of that One, because I travel enough that I don't know. I just don't like expense because it's just so like the mental effort of it. Like we were talking before we started recording, guys, I have a mattress on the floor. I'm not doing my expense reports. Like it's not going to happen. So let's just give up on that.
You did get sheets.
I have sheets. I have,
almost a comforter.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I have a comforter.
Oh, a comforter. I'm so sorry.
I have pillows. It's
He's got pillows.
But it goes beyond that. And I think that there's also like, but actually, it actually even goes beyond that. And this is where I feel like my own personal emotional connection with something like that in all of the fintech problems, right? Is that like, so just, I have ADHD. You have ADHD, I believe. Hopefully I'm not like.
No, I think the listeners are aware.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing is that. I hope I'm not revealing, going full kimono on
Hold
here.
on, stop. Everyone thought I was super focused. Stop. Immediately edit that out.
No, but like but what I'm saying is that there's neurodivergencies, right?
Yeah.
Like in the fact of the matter is I'm very good at lots of things, right? Like I can connect dots. I have got a lot of talents. Doing expense reports is not one of them, which is funny because I'm great at data, but there's something about that particular type of organization.
Yeah.
And also I resent it. And when I resent it, I'm like, I don't have a degree in finance. I'm out here traveling because you told me
busy,
to.
and it takes a lot of time.
Now
to go back through all your receipts.
Now I got to take time away from my kids because my husband's yelling at me because I missed payroll again. Legitimately, like, no, but this is the No, this is real.
Oh, I know.
This is all a true story.
We know.
And I never.
It's just have to keep from crying, Kelly. It's all.
It's true, but everybody feels this way, and this is part of the reason why I think exactly what you're talking about is that I think that the beautiful thing about working for startups or early stage or just tech in general is that we get to solve fucking problems in a way that corporate America is not able to always because there's regulation and they move a little bit slower and there's
some
all
just don't
of those
want
things.
to. There's problems they're not interested in solving.
Right? And I feel like I'm very passionate about this thing, about this idea, solving things that were agonizing or painful and taking that burden away from them so they can focus on doing the shit that they love instead of doing some painful shit that has nothing to do with their actual jobs, you know? And that is something that legitimately wakes me up in the morning and I feel passionate about it. And so that's the other thing that I would say about for comms people. It's hard sometimes to be able to say like, you need to believe, I hate to say eat your own dog food because there's a difference between I'm just everything that we do is like overly promotional and our job is just to pitch our company 24/7. I don't think that that's effective. I think it's far more effective to talk about the issue. What is the problem? And then this is a proof point or like a solve, but it's not like the company in and of itself. It's we're solving a problem and here's the benefit, which is also why if we get into messaging, I'm a huge believer in benefit-led messaging rather than product-led messaging. Nobody cares how it's made. They just want to know, what does it fucking do for me?
Yeah, it's wild. The number, like a couple of you kind of alluded to this, but the number of pitches I get that are just a wall of text, and I'm so basic in terms of my thought process that I'm literally like, who are you pitching to me? And that person, like sometimes it's not in the subject line, sometimes it's not in the first paragraph, and sometimes it's not bolded. And I'm like, literally, I'm just like, you're gonna make me work this hard to find out about that? No,
it's probably solid text too.
Trash.
Like, solid.
Zach, how many,
like 2-sentence
How
paragraphs.
many emails are you getting a day?
Between the podcast and Money 2020, I mean, it obviously depends on the time of year based on the Money 2020 job, but inbound pitches a day, probably 4 or 5, something like that. Yeah, and 4 or 5 suck generally. Like the number of podcasts that I got pitched the CEO of Convera the other day. I will do that one, right? But like that's also one that if I actually like took the time and made that is a company that I work with very regularly and would be very like I could get that, but it's just there was a podcast that was set up this morning with Drew Glover from Fiat Ventures, and it was like it started to get set up by his PR group, his agency, And I was just like, it was just easier for me to answer that person and be like, yeah, I have this time, than to text Drew. But then like the back and forth just got weird. So I just texted Drew and we made it happen. So it's this weird, like the number of times that I'm actually taking a pitch from somebody I don't already know or have a relationship with, like, it's rare. I mean, people aren't pitching me Ben Horowitz. People aren't pitching,
I would have guessed you were getting hundreds. So,
I mean, it adds up to hundreds over time,
and
but
if
like,
you're in the car for $250 worth of Uber rides.
Well, the other thing about this is, I mean, you guys have alluded to journalists, right? And I think there's a really big difference between like,
True.
What you've called me before, which is micro-influencer sort of a thing, which, I won't take that personally, but
I was gonna say, I don't know, is that a backhanded compliment?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fuck you, Kelly.
I didn't say micro. Did you say micro? I don't think so. I just said, I said B2B influencer.
That was, okay.
I didn't say
maybe
micro.
I just feel that way about myself. Fine.
Kelly here. That is great.
Aren't they finfluencers now?
Finfluencers.
They're a finfluencer. Yeah.
I think I'm going to kill myself. I don't think I want to be a
Don't
finfluencer.
die on us again. Don't die on us again.
Yeah. But no, I'm not getting. Who do you think I'm getting 100 a day or something? Like, no. But I would imagine like a Wall Street Journal journalist. That is hard to say at this point in the day.
TechCrunch reporters are telling me all the time that they're getting hundreds of pitches per day.
TechCrunch, I think, does. Yeah, a lot of
that would make sense.
Yeah. But when you think
also,
about
I don't
it
believe
too,
them, for the record. I think everybody wants to make themselves sound a lot more important than they are.
Well, that's for sure.
But I will say the media landscape has shrunk. And you got a lot of comms teams out there. Yeah. And to your earlier point, Erin, some people just feel like they have to be sending pitches all the time, even if there's nothing new. And it's do you want to meet my person pitch, which is like cringe for our industry. And to your point too, Kelly, comms isn't necessarily rocket science, but if you don't believe in what you're selling or out there marketing, it's so tough. So people do have to really believe that they have a good story here, because otherwise reporters see right through it. They can read that pitch and know immediately if this is garbage or if it's like something interesting that they should bite on. And that comes through so clearly in the pitch.
And their job depends on it. Mine, like, y'all don't know how many viewers I have. I mean, like, we're starting on YouTube now, so it's a little more visible, but got to tell you, that's a slow flywheel to start moving. But like, you don't know the number of podcast downloads, things like that, and there's just this perception based on the brand that's been built and whatever. And like, I don't, we know the number of subscribers that like a Simon Taylor has because they like name it at the top of the thing, but like so I guess the question I'm leading towards that I'm actually very curious about now that we're thinking about it, / I'm thinking about it out loud, is how important is a journalist at a TechCrunch, a Wall Street Journal, in terms of like your relationships, and how important is an industry like a Nicole Casperson, a me, a Jason Mikula, an Alex Johnson, Simon Taylor sort of type. Like sometimes I'm super glad that I'm getting to talk to Ariel right now, but is this the best use of Ariel's time? And I think in that case, it was a good use of Ariel's time. But also I find myself in these conversations, like haven't interviewed Stuart yet, looking forward to it. Yeah. And I think it'll be great, but more great for me than for you guys, in my opinion. But like, what's the value of fintech industry brand building and like actual brand building in the rest of the world? Yeah,
I think like to that point, Stuart, our CEO and co-founder, I also get like a lot of requests for him. And, the truth of the matter is like all of our CEOs. I didn't even
think about that. You guys get pitched too.
All the time.
Yeah. And
I'm doing a lot of obvious connecting of dots here in the retrospect.
A lot of inbound. And like, the truth of the matter is like CEOs like Stuart, like Ariel, like Zach, and Vlad, they're really busy. Like their number one jobs are like running large companies. And they also have personal lives and, like those are their biggest issues. Like that's their number one priority, is making sure that everything is running smoothly, like in the company. And, then like, we also get followed up with be like, oh, we haven't heard back. Like, you're interested in this. And, the truth of the matter is like, sometimes it's just a scheduling thing. Like they'll be like, oh, like, sorry, like they're out of town that week. Like they're traveling, like, and I also don't feel like it's our place, like as comms people, to tell like what our CEO's personal life is, like what they're doing at any point in time. Yeah. To be like, sorry, like, thank you for thinking of us. Like you can't make it. Like you never want to burn like a relationship or such like that, or it requires travel, which is, or just like that's just not possible like in that given day. But I think that is really important because number one, like it is a really small industry. And you want to keep relationships warm with everybody, like I think that's kind of the biggest thing. To Kelly's point earlier too about it being media relations, I think like that communications aspect, like calling communications versus PR, I actually like much better because like there's all these things that's like, right. It's like, we're doing like events. Like I put an event together last night that was like a networking like event. Like there's so much more. And it's like, there was no point to that besides like getting people together to like talk. Like, and I think that's also the value, like as Kelly pointed out about like, the value of like different people in the industry versus reporters is like, you should always be adding value. Like make sure you're adding value to them. So I think it also depends on like who your goal is and who you're trying to reach with your news. Like, if you were an earlier stage company, you're probably really trying to reach investors. Yeah. So like, but you're an early stage company. So, you're probably not going to be in the Wall Street Journal, like unless you've done something like solve some magical world problem. Like the first time we were in the Wall Street Journal was when the stimulus payments were first issued. We were the first fintech in the country to credit those payments. I'd worked at Current.
Sounds like a story to me.
It was like, I'll actually never forget that night. It was like April 2020, like first in a quarantine here in New York City. And, I was home in my apartment all alone and like, working at home. And I got like a ping from some of the company like, oh my God, we're getting stimulus payments. And, Stuart made the decision we were going to credit them immediately. And I called the Wall Street Journal. Stuart got on the phone with her and like, we got the story like that night. It's like, that was something like monumental.
That's really cool.
And so like that was a value, and then everyone kind of flooded me after. And, especially I'd worked at Current like 8 months at that point.
News. Emotional hug.
Exactly. Those are things that are important. But, like if you're an early stage company and like, you just raise like a seed round or you have a funding round, well, maybe TechCrunch is a good place for you, like in going to like their startups team and such like that, like if you're trying to then reach industry. Like I know a lot of like investors or partners listen to Zach's podcast or, read Jason's newsletter or Alex's or Simon's, and they're very trusted in the industry.
Yeah. God, we need more women. Like, Nicole's the only one I can name.
Oh my God,
sad.
Nicole. Like,
no, I named her earlier, but it's so many dudes.
I went to at Fintech meetup. I went to a women's dinner, a women leader.
You had dinner alone at Fintech meetup?
It was 7.
You did leave me for that one dinner.
I know. I'm sorry. Yeah. But
we're spilling the tea.
It's totally fine.
But like it's a very small. It's a small group, which is probably it's a very small group of people and women who are involved in fintech. So definitely like there's a reason why we're all friends. I think, and also we're all very like-minded. So it is kind of like a fintech family for real. And I love that. Just to add on to what Erin was saying too, is that part of this as well is because fintech is a smaller closed group. And I think of them almost like concentric circles, right? But in order, I always think when I approach these things, like why have Ariel on a podcast with you? And one of the reasons why I would want to do it, right, for Ariel, who doesn't like everybody else, right? He's very particular about his time and his energy. And also, quite frankly, a lot of people want the CEO, and not always, the CEO isn't always the best person to answer
Rarely
a question.
The best person.
Rarely.
Yeah, I'm getting into
this. And it drives me, and it's one part of media that I understand why, but I also am like, are you sure? Like we can speak to this, like if you're the jack of all trades, and that's what a CEO's job is, right? They're the chief storyteller, all of these things, and they can speak to it, right? Are they the best person to speak to the granular aspects of a given business line?
100% no.
Probably not, and
no, more than probably not. Just no.
Like your head of product.
And so
unless they're super early stage.
I do wish media would kind of lose that attachment to the CEO, but there's that. The other but for me, like what I like to do is I try to figure out what is the best possible platform to move something, right? One of the things about Ariel in particular is that he can, I really like showing off his personality.
Mhm.
Sometimes in ways that you're not able to, sometimes in traditional CNBC or a sit down interview with Bloomberg or any of those things. And the ability to personalize something, I find I like it when CEOs say, I made a huge mistake at that point, and this is how I remedied it.
Yeah.
Or there was this going on. Or I like to do this on, like, when you're able to, I find like when you're able to personalize people and make them feel a little bit more human, it's a lot easier to understand like what drives them and what is the mission and what does that company actually feel like, rather than just a couple of sound bites or some top line, headlines that paint a particular story but don't actually convey the truth. It's the actual truth of what a company is or their personality as a company or their values.
100%.
I'll give you the early stage perspective on it too, because it's a lot of what you're saying. But for early stage founders, they're constantly in fundraising mode. So they're talking to investors, and investors want to hear about the ARR and the sales motion. Most of their audience does not. They do not want to hear the nitty gritty, like in the weeds. So it's actually taking those opportunities to get a founder out there and to sort of get their talk track starting to congeal a bit and solidify there is taken for granted. I think some folks are like, all right, they want to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. And I've seen a lot of folks think, the founder is so polished, but really for that specific audience, they're constantly in fundraising mode. So they're, excited for these types of questions when the audience does not want to read about sort of the in the weeds, really deep down technical stuff. For the most part, they want to go back to your point, Kelly, like they want to hear the story. Like, what's the interesting narrative? What are they changing for the ecosystem? Why are they building it? Like, who's the actual user at the end of the day? And then going back to the comment on not too many women in fintech, we built CMAND because we were like, most people building on Plaid where everybody was looking very similar. And we were like, we got to help shine a light on people that are, coming from different backgrounds. Really too few women in the space at all levels. So,
and it's just like the women that are in the space are so focused in comms and in PR that it's like, I honestly, like the Andy Cohen thing's like kind of funny in terms of like, on the way over here, you and I were having girl talk. Like, let's be honest about it. Like you were like, so this person hasn't heard back from you in like a few months and like, they're not happy about it, but like, and I'm doing a terrible version of you, and I'm being like very overly sexist, but we had the entire like back and forth that you would have. And it's like, it's just such a, I don't know, it's just a problem that we need to solve. And there's you gave a little bit of it there with CMAND, but don't you do like more than that? Isn't there like an additional piece to what you guys do in terms of what you're alluding to?
Sure, give the full pitch.
Come on.
Come on.
We
did the sponsored segment for Navan.
We got Karen Navan. Come on, I'm a whore. Let's go.
We very much consider ourselves a comms firm versus a PR firm. And I think it comes from our DNA being in-house, but CMAND, so CMAND, is sort of, we were like, is it Chelsea and Meg or is it comms and marketing? It stood for sort of a few things. But for early stage companies, they're mostly, especially when we focus on B2B and infrastructure, it's oftentimes a very technical team that doesn't have any go-to-market yet, where it's like nobody's really sure if it's a comms problem or a marketing problem, but they know that they need support there. Yeah. And they need smart support who's done it before and who knows how to get in there and do things. PR is one part of comms, but it's not everything. So we think of anything under the earned umbrella as something that comms team should get in there and help. When I was at UBS, we probably had 5 agencies. We had a lot of agencies, really, really smart people. But that sprawl, your whole time is just spent managing. We were like, we'll build CMAND so that we know where to find things. We can go get it. We can get stuff done, soup to nuts. We're going to come up with ideas. We're going to, if it's this comms person in-house needs this extra muscle, great. Or if it's without a team, great. Or if it's a CEO, we're going to help tell them what needs to get done. Because a lot of times founders are like, I don't know what I don't know. What should I be asking you? So that's getting, Money 2020, the fintech prom of all things, getting on stage at events, thinking about awards, thinking about thought leadership. We have a bunch of former journalists who are great, strong writers, thinking through the strategy for the year. As Ryan Lawler at Axios tells me all the time, he's like, I don't like product news. So if you have product news, how do you actually get it covered? Because most reporters do not like covering it. So how do we think outside the box? how do we be really smart about the ecosystem? We work outside of fintech. We have a really strong roster in AI, shocker, as do a lot of teams now, but frontier tech. And, we're so lucky to work with VCs too. So there's no sort of, it's not black and white on what we can and can't do, because early stage communications is a lot of things. Chelsea is a former multi-time head of marketing. So we've got the marketing chops and the comms chops, because a lot of times that the acute problem sort of morphs over time, and what works for Q1 might have to evolve a little bit for Q2 or a couple quarters in the future. And you need to be able to muscle in there. I think that's one of the things that we get most excited about, is helping early stage companies punch above their weight. And then continue on with them as teams grow, helping scale those teams and helping add extra muscle there.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for letting me do the quick commercial.
The reason that you get to do that is, one, because I've never gotten a bad pitch from you all. And you don't, like, even before we were friends, you weren't an asshole about me not answering. And that's such a big, I mean, this is the thing we had a conversation about, Girl Talk, on the way over, was like, how much are people just like, how much are you required to answer everyone, is a question that I ask myself every day. And my answer is consistently like, I can't. But
You're not.
Are some comms people being mean and if you don't respond to their emails?
Oh yeah, there's people who like.
There are.
I'm gonna shut up and look at Erin.
No, I mean, like 100%, like, and the same way be like, oh, this reporter, again, this goes back earlier what I say too, is like, when reporters, like, someone's not emailing you back, like,
take the hits. He's not texting you back, girl.
Like,
okay?
Like when I, it was, okay, like there's some extraordinary life circumstances, like you tear your quad like I did, like something like that. Like that was an extraordinary circumstance. That's why I was thinking back to that person. Otherwise, like, we're all busy people. Like we all read our email every day. Like, and it's in comms, like, especially like it's your job to be really responsive. He's like, you're really responsive. I'm like, well, it's actually my job,
right,
like to get back to people. So like the truth of the matter is, like, and reporters are like reading their emails like all the time. Like if you give them a day or two, like, and they haven't gotten back to you, like a good, maybe a reminder once, or if they tell you like, you know what, I'm not good on email, send me a text message, whatever you've heard of Kelly, your point about, learn where they like, and have that relationship with them. Don't just try to find their phone number and text them if like out of the blue.
Empathetic about it, right?
But just realize, like, if someone's not getting back, it means they just don't want to talk to you.
How
so
much is this like dating?
You're not providing any value to them. That's why they're not getting back to you. They don't see value in your conversation.
How much is this?
You need to have an emotional, a social EQ, right? Like that is that if you are in comms and you don't have like a social EQ, like that's a huge issue, right? And part of this is like, I can pick up what you're putting down, or even look, if somebody's not responding to me after 2, that just means like that, unless I feel strongly and I know the reporter and I know that they probably just haven't had time to look at it, but I know that it's for them, then I'll be like, I'll send a text, or I'll say like, hey, did you see, and usually it's because they're busy, right? Or something like that. And but only if it's timely and only if it comes to it. But I would never like ever dream about like deluging somebody's inbox, or even like the other thing that I like to say too often is like, don't ever burn a bridge that you might have to walk back over someday, right? Yeah. And so that is, and you never know, right? Who's going to blow up, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. And so a lot of this, one of the things that we haven't talked about too here is that I also feel very strongly in like making these in-person connections. I can't tell you how many relationships I've built because not because I'm an invisible person on the other side of the screen. It's because like we get along. We're friends. Yeah. Like we're of like minds. Like we're following the same things. And then it does become more fluid, right? It's a conversation, hopefully, a dance that you're having with multiple partners at once. And just depending on, that sounds really bad.
I love it.
Like, is that like dating? More and more like dating.
My whole question of all of this is this like dating?
I know, like dating.
Yeah, what's described me as like keep your dance card moving in dating. You're just kind of like, oh, cross that one. I'm moving another one at a time. Don't do that.
Early on in my career, I was at BNP Paribas, which is a French bank, and my boss, who was the best, went to a city in London and moved. And all of a sudden, I was there. I was like, early 20s and in a job where I was like, what is a derivative? And I was like, shoot, they're going to have to get me a boss because I'm not really sure. But I was like, one thing I know how to do is go out and meet people. So if there's any younger folks, I was like, I don't really know this whole investment bank strategy just yet. But I was like, but every day I'm going to go out and meet one or two reporters. So at the end of the year, I hosted a party and brought a bunch of press and 100 reporters came. But I went out there and I was like, I'm going to go meet people. And through these conversations, my talk track's going to get a little stronger because every day I'm practicing it and I'm telling people about sort of what we do in the US. And B, I've got to do something. Like I've got to get smart on it. And I've got to also like make us new contacts or keep the ones that my amazing boss had made and shared. And you don't have to know everything, but you have to start somewhere. You have to be good at something.
And you have to be able to work with people. Like if I hadn't gone to Tech, you and I wouldn't be this close had I not gone to TechCrunch.
This is true.
And I wouldn't have gone to TechCrunch had it not been for you.
Right.
And like the whole thing is like coming back to how
and
small
I
of an
wouldn't know
ecosystem.
Meg because if it wasn't for you, and I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for John, and I wouldn't we're all interconnected here. And
this is the smallest TAM podcast ever, but it's so important and very true.
John was the first one too, who was like,
John,
Zach's amazing. He's my buddy. And I was like, oh, I like John. So if he thinks you guys are buds.
And like legitimately, I remember having a meeting with John while I was on vacation here with my children. Right. And so like
Kelly's got great boundaries for work.
I was like,
my husband's yelling at her.
I was like,
love you, Kel.
I'll meet you at Bryant Park. So like legitimately, like I'm sitting there trying to have a meeting with John, like on the grass, and my kids are coming up with, hey, I found like this mobile library. Can I take this book? You know, and like, what about the carousel? And I'm like, sure, here.
Whose kids are these?
Yeah. I don't know where.
Sorry, John. There's random children coming to things.
I don't know why they're calling me mom.
It is like dating. The kids just show up and
he's like, it's too much baggage.
He's like, is she looking for a stepfather?
Everyone in New York's dressed the same.
But the fact of the matter is, like, we all have lives and we're all like, you know what I mean? It does kind of personalize it, and it makes it so much easier when you like have a relationship and you know what they want and you know what you can offer and you can work together and you can have that kind of conversation. It does make things so much easier rather than just cold pitching. Cold pitching is totally different, and it does take a lot of the things that we were talking about. I also think that, to your point, just to bring it back to the comms versus PR stuff, you know, part of that is that doing that internally as well. Like a good comms person, in my opinion, is not, I like to talk about it like in a lot of places, PR or media relations or that kind of stuff is kind of considered like a baton, right? Like I think of it as like a relay race, right? Like, okay, product passes off to PMM and then PMM passes their baton off to comms. And by the time it reaches comms, I look at it and I go, hey, why didn't we collect data on this? Why didn't we do this? Why didn't we do this? What about this? There's this, like the market might be feeling this way. What if we just did this? And so you find that if you're able to actually be a part of the conversation early on, especially when it comes to like product development or any of those things, PR is able to catch a lot of the issues that could potentially come back to bite you later or help develop it so it's a little bit more holistic. And you're thinking, like, part of our job is to think about things holistically, right? I like to say, like, one of the biggest parts of my job is to essentially game out all of the possible things that could happen. And then what is the most likely, and then develop plans accordingly to like what I have figured out is going to happen. And so part of comms, if you're thinking about an effective comms person, right, is not just about like crisis comms or executive comms or these kinds of comms. It's about thinking about comms and you're seeing this more and more, right? With chief comms, like officers and stuff like that, where you are actually thinking about how am I going to take this thing and make it applicable for an audience and make that like actually make them want to use it? And comms helps provide a lot of that bridge. User testing is important too, but there's also how is the public going to react to this and how can we adjust our strategy so that way we're thinking about things with open eyes and we're going to the market having thought about all possible ways that we could do it, or this is the most effective way to market it, you know?
Mm-hmm. So the thing I'm hearing is like, if you're internal and you can build the relationships correctly, then there's incentive alignment and you can like all run together. Mm-hmm. We can edit this out if I'm wrong or if you don't want to share this, but I'm pretty sure one of the things you had told me about CMAND previously is that you will sometimes take equity as a piece of kind of the situation. That seems like the closest you can get to building that kind of incentive alignment with a quasi-agency model. Is that something that like, do you agree?
I've done that
like
too.
Yeah,
I've done that too. And like my personal capacity as well, because it is like a lot of times early stage startups they also don't have funds or they don't have this. And if you believe in a company, I definitely think equity is a good way to go about it, but it also gives you a piece of the company, right? So you're able to get in there.
Yeah, I do. There's a couple of things I'll say. One, yes. And it's interesting. And I think it was just getting us smarter on the fintech ecosystem too, to diligence companies. And it's also a good way for some founders who are like, we're actually looking to get more women on cap tables. So there's some that are actively out there thinking like, who are strong women in fintech who are looking to get on cap tables? And also as an angel, you're like, how can we help support? So we don't typically do it in, we work as a partner and these companies still pay us. And then we're like, but we want to be mutually incentivized.
So
we put our own cash in because we're not, it's not sweat equity at that point.
Yeah.
And we're like, we've diligenced your company just like all your other angels have. And they actually like it. The first time I pitched it, I think I sort of blacked out a little bit and I was like, just do it. And I had practiced in front of the mirror a few times and I was like, get ready, let's go. And then afterwards I was like, I didn't die. We're fine. And they had said no. The second time, it was either the first or second time we got a no, but either the first or second time we also got a yes from a very strong fintech company. I'm still thankful for that because that was sort of like a jumping board where I was like, or a diving board. I was like, let's go. We can ask this of early. And guess what? They actually were really excited to hear that. Here's the reasons that we want to be on there. Also, like, do you have women on your cap table? Do you want more women? They're like, yeah, actually, we would love you guys to jump on the cap table. Small checks, but checks. Let's do that. And then there is no way that comms agency isn't going to work their butt off, right? Because they want that money and it's a small check to you, Mr. or Mrs. raising $20 million, but it's not necessarily a small check to me. That's real money. That's real cash here. That's going into it. So yeah, we've done a lot of angel investing and some, none of the companies have gone public yet. One got bought though. Which was exciting. And we've gotten really close with founders that way because they see us as an advisor.
Yeah.
They're like, these guys have skin in the game.
You're part of the company then.
Yeah.
They believed me from the earliest days. And they're definitely going to tell me if I'm saying something that they don't think is a good move. There's no reason why they're not going to push back, especially if they've
This clarifies your pushback point earlier because there's definitely like, that's the lack of pushback sometimes in how we get to these pitches.
Can I ask a question,
big part of the problem.
Yeah.
How do you guys deal with, like, have you run into a situation where you have to, like, you're dealing with a conflict of interest there internally, like you yourself personally? Like, I know that this might be great for, usually the vast majority of times, right? Like what's best for PR, like best for comms, what's best for PR is also probably what's best for the company. But I'm just wondering, has that situation ever arisen where you're like, I have to put aside my angel investor hat and just put on my comms hat versus let me put on my comms hat, or like vice versa?
That's a good one. I wish we had like hundreds of angel investments. Yeah. And I was like, this problem actually comes up. It's an interesting one. Now that Plaid's so big too, like there are ways that it's like, oh, we're early employees there. There's some of that sort of in the background, but I think there's some church and state too, where you can work really, really hard. We don't take conflicting clients. And we also are really lucky that we partner with companies that we think are winners in their space.
Right.
So we're like, we do that diligencing, and it's like, it needs to be a mutual fit where we're like, we think you're going to win here because we can't take anybody else in this space. And we think we're going to be lucky enough to partner with you. And we want to do the work to like make sure you get that mantle spot. But no, hopefully at some point we'll be in that spot where we have to think through whether to do the investment and partner, or whether it's just a good investment. But you're probably similarly like looking at, it sounds like, other opportunities to invest. And how do you think about it?
Similarly, right? Like I definitely, like making sure that there's no conflict of interest is one, but I also I feel like also I'm lucky enough to, and I think Erin's in this, and we're lucky enough to be in a situation where if we do take on projects, it's because we believe strongly in the company and their mission, and they're filling a void in the market. They're filling a gap, a need in the market. And for me, it's like, do I think that this company particularly has like all of the things that they need? And what's especially sexy, I feel like, to me, is when it's like that feeling when you first heard about Uber and you were like, oh, duh. Like, duh.
It's the worst.
You know what I mean?
The shit, I should have done that moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And like,
I wish I was a sociopath that could have raised that much money and done the thing. Like, shit.
Why wasn't I caught out in the rain in San Francisco?
I should have invented that or invested in it? Which?
Oh, I'm over 6 foot and I'm white and I'm a male, so my thought is invent.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like,
I don't know
my general response is like, I should have done that. Why was that not my doing?
Better, faster, stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah, also invested in it. Yeah, boom.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I do. I would be CEO and the lead seed round. Yeah, all of the above.
Problem.
Yeah. Yes,
but it is that moment, and if I get that moment with a company, then I don't know. It's like, I know it sounds so trite and stuff like that, but I tell you what, there's nothing like the feeling of those kinds of moments where you're like, oh, that's inspiring, right? Like if you lose, like, I'm inspired by this, it's like, why are you here? You know what I mean? And so it's like those moments, or it's like getting that amazing like hit or something like that is like, it's like Christmas morning for me. Like, honestly, it still gives me an adrenaline rush after, as long as I've been doing it. I know you guys feel the same way. It's like literally,
I'm still talking about that moment with the Wall Street Journal. That was 4 years ago. This is, like it's one of the best moments in like since I've worked at Current.
To this day, still, like,
for so many reasons.
I remember my very first like viral hit was on a story that I did on bookings at Donald Trump hotels plummeting during his 2016 election. And we were a small company. This was for Hitmonk at the time, which was Steve Huffman and Adam Goldstein and Alexis. They had a travel company in between Condé Nast, Reddit
I love
Times.
Hitmonk.
Yeah. And so that's where I started working with them, and having that first like really big viral hit and getting people like David Fahrenholt and Mike Schmidt from like the New York Times like sending me emails. And it really, the one thing about that is it's that feeling and it is that rush, but it also makes you realize that the world is a lot smaller than you probably think.
Yeah.
And actually, reporters are accessible if you know how to approach them. One of the things that we didn't even talk about pitching is like, what are they covering?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so many reporters, and it happens to all of us. Like, even me, like every now and then I'll pitch somebody and they're like, oh, we actually are focused more on banking than we are on this fintech side. And it's like, oh, I didn't, that's good information. But
it's also changed. Like, reporters change roles and beats. And
it does.
We're all like busy people.
But like,
that's the thing too. It's be like, hey, that just happened. Yeah. You're like, oh, I'm really more focused on that. That was an outlier story.
Yeah.
That like you read that I was filling in for somebody, or
it happens.
There's a reason for that.
But then you just keep it moving. But like my point here too is like, for the most part, you should know what a reporter is gonna like, what is gonna motivate them to write a story. What kind of coverage do they do? If they're, we know Ryan Lawler doesn't like product news, so why would we pitch him product news unless it was like, hey, we just did $500 million in rev based on this new product or something, like you can couch it in a little bit sometimes, I find, but like for the most part, it's like don't pitch them stuff that they're not going to write about, because then you're just going to ruin your own credibility, right? And they're less likely. I like to think of it as like layers, right? Even for you, for me, I think of my own inbox as like layers, right? There's some I'm just never going to see. I wake up to like 500 emails. You know what I mean?
West Coast life is tough.
It's
everybody out there goes back to like the inboxes. Never getting back to you right away is not always,
No,
just
but I tell you what, I tell you what though, I just like anything else, I scan my inbox, and I'm looking through it like everybody else is looking through their inbox. And guess what? If I see an email from Erin or if I see an email from Zach, I'm opening that email before I'm opening up the stuff. And Meg, of course, Meg.
But not you, Emily, because you're not here.
Each other.
I mean, that is the other thing, right? Is like if you're emailing someone really consistently and you over a year or however long have not shifted to text or, whatever it is, like
it's a transactional relationship then.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, and we can talk about this separately, but with you two, like we going back and forth on Instagram sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's...
I talk to a lot of reporters. In fact, I talk to some TV hosts on Instagram. It's about finding...
That's hilarious. Yeah.
Like big ones too. And sometimes it's about finding them where they are, which is also a part of understanding where it is. Like some reporters eschew Twitter. Can I say Twitter?
Yeah.
I'm going to say Twitter.
We said fuck. I think we can say Twitter.
The company formerly known as Twitter. Some people like they have different. Some reporters are exclusively on LinkedIn. Some reporters hate LinkedIn.
I'm finding out for the first time people are on Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, I think how much time is work on Instagram versus looking at other
I think
things?
you also have to like know the reporter well enough. Like I wouldn't just, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't just go to Instagram to
you
start
don't
with,
cold pitch people on social.
Like
It's
you cold pitch me on Instagram, like fuck no. But like we're friends.
If you
so
all
it's
of a sudden get don't Instagram request somebody. This is not early stage advice we're giving out. It's like, can you have a relationship with that person?
It's also just bad advice because that's not how Instagram works. If you're not friends with somebody, do not cold pitch them because it will end up in a folder that they will never see and they will never get a notification for. So bad.
I mean, there's some instances where it's okay. I mean, you're an early stage company, like when I worked at Current, like, we were, I joined, we were a Series A company. Not that many people had heard of us. Like a lot of people I emailed, like, and had,
but you were cold pitching people on Instagram.
No, I don't think that was even like, I'm like, what year was that? 2019. But it was like, no, then it was like emails, like that was appropriate. And I think that goes back to the other conversation of like, knowing where to start and like, okay, like those emails, like, like for example, Zach's email is not on the Money 2020 website, which probably means
Thank God.
But like there were some conferences where it's like speaking opportunities and it has this person's email address. So it's like, okay, which means that's probably a good place to start. They're going to be receptive to you reaching out to them because they're directly telling you to. So that was one of the first ones like I did when I was like, okay, like Stuart and Trevor, our CTO and co-founder, like, out there speaking, it was like, what events are appropriate for the size we were at the time, what we wanted to convey, and who would be open to us. And I remember like those first couple, it made me feel like, because I didn't know anything about fintech either. I came from sports and I was also in travel. So it was like, to Meg's point about like, I think she had a great point, but just go out and like, you're like, okay, I'm smart. And like, just be a human. Like you were a human being. You're like, oh, I can go meet and talk to people. Like that's how Zach and I got to know each other. Like we really became friends over the past like year. And it was because we were getting on calls to talk about the show. And like, there was one day I was like, oh, okay, Zach, I'm glad we're talking. I just was a flat out human. I think I just had like a total breakdown about something. And I just told you.
You humanized finally.
I became a human.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, wow. And then you're like, wow, Erin's like really real.
Yeah.
This isn't just about work. I actually enjoy talking to you.
Yeah.
And, that was like, that had nothing to do with work.
Yeah. And even if you're only getting 4 or 5 pitches a day, which is nothing.
Oh, sorry. It's a lot.
Do we need to separate you two?
Yeah, we do. Meg and I, we haven't seen each other in long enough that it's just pure.
I do believe that it was food poisoning.
the pork roll.
Yeah.
It was shrimp.
Back in the fall, it was pork roll. Now it's shrimp roll.
You're queen of food poisoning. But yeah, even if you're only getting 4 or 5 a day or, whatever, that turns into 25 a week. And then you don't have time, or I don't have time to answer email during the day most of the time. So it's at night or it's weekends. And at that point, like it is 100, right?
Yeah.
From like the past however long or whatever it is. And you're just like, nope. Person I know. Yep. And just like that automatic humanity is just like, that's the thing. And the more real you like, I do think the idea of really tailoring the pitch 100%, like you guys are saying. Like, if somebody cussed in a pitch to me, like over email, it would work. It would work better than
Zach is searching his inbox. He's like, anybody say
yeah, is there a
open this fucking email now?
Subject line
yeah.
Forget all of
you. The person that's upset that I'm not answering, just tell them that, here's the
subject
hack.
line. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Zach. Don't open this one either.
Yeah, that's a good one. Don't open this one either.
Funny.
Yeah. And there's some like, if the person you're pitching has some personality, like why not have some fucking personality with it?
Let's talk about that though, because you're just making me think about also a counter narrative is like is so great sometimes too. So there's nothing I love more than a counter narrative. There's legitimately nothing I love more. It makes me like I'm getting excited even thinking about it.
I don't know if I know what a counter narrative is.
Like,
so
I started like glowing.
Okay.
Derivatives.
What is derivatives? Counter narrative.
Yeah. Okay. What is a counter narrative?
A counter narrative, for those who are not aware, is
which is just me.
Essentially like, hey, everybody's reporting this thing is going this way. But hey, we've got data that actually
Opposite
shows
POV.
it this way.
I could have read
right. It's a counter narrative to the prevailing narrative, right? It counters the prevailing narrative.
Yeah.
And I mean, like at the end of, if you have a strong enough, I mean, clearly you can only do it if you actually have something real to say and you really do have counter narrative or you have data. Like I know that oftentimes like counter narratives scare a lot of PR people because there's nothing worse than being like the one black sheep in the room
wrong.
full of white.
Yeah.
But you're also the only black sheep in a sea of white, right? And so if you learn how to use that tool effectively and actually bring something real to the conversation instead of just saying what everybody else is saying, or especially if you can like bring light to something that nobody is talking about, I think that it is so effective. It's such an effective PR tool and a communications tool. And so, yeah, I love a good counter narrative.
That makes sense now. So this is bringing me to a question that's been in the back of my head this whole time, and I haven't wanted to derail us. And also,
what have you stolen before?
Someone's listening to the Are You Human episodes. Don't go back to episode 100.
When did you lose your virginity, Meg?
Wow.
Kelly coming out hot. Meg's referencing a previous podcast. Kelly's just having a good time.
We are friends. Yeah. We are, just to be clear, we're all friends here.
Yes.
I promise.
This is not bullshit. We are actually real friends. You can probably tell by now. Okay, so real friends. Are press releases dead?
I love this question. I talk about this a lot. Early days Plaid, it was a very developer. It was important to really speak to the developer. We were not big fans of press releases, but it doesn't mean that that's right for everybody. Like there are lots of founders who really want to wax poetic in their blog posts and they really want to get into the weeds and talk to their buyer, but there's reasons to do the press release too. People write press releases sometimes just to pitch reporters and they're not going to push it over the wire at the end of the day, but it really organizes it and it makes you get approval and feel really concise about the message that's going out there. Okay. So I like it because you get investors to agree on it. You get your founder to agree on it. You get everybody to agree on it. And it's a good vehicle to go out and pitch with, whether or not it goes out there. Are they narrative driven? No, absolutely not. More so the blog post will have the story and the sort of the why behind it, but get everybody on the same page. There are too many times when investors are like, that's not how we should be describing the company. It should be more like this. And it's like, they didn't look at the blog post, but they will more often look at a press release, especially early on. And it's so important for seed stage, Series A stage companies to really figure out who they are and get that messaging super, super crisp. And a press release is just one exercise to do that. There are regulatory reasons for public companies needing to do it. Sure. There's different size companies that are getting ready to IPO that are doing it for the validity aspects, SEO, things of that sort. It depends. There's no one right answer, except that if you guys disagree, that's fair too. But it shifts. And it's also in vogue and also different industries. Yeah. If you're selling into the enterprise, they want to see it. If your buyer isn't, if you're selling into McDonald's, they're not dead. They're going to be Googling it. But if you're selling to other developer companies or other startups in SF, that's not what their, procurement team is going to need to see. But if it sort of just depends on your sales motion and how the stage of your company is my 2 cents on it.
I'm noticing a trend of it depends in all of your roles.
Yeah. I would say in general, I agree with Meg. Like we don't do a lot. We never have. I think in the sense of, I do think there are some companies that overuse it, that there's a press release for like
an award
or, every single hire that they make. And I feel like then
that
that's
one
kind of
is
like
bonkers to me.
Like, it's one, and there might be time and places, but you kind of can realize, be like, wow, that company puts out a lot of press releases. They must really be kind of like desperate for some kind of attention.
I was included in a press release as a previous employer for just joining because I came from a different institution that was apparently worth, and I was like, this is a bad sign. Like they're including me in the press release. This is a bad sign.
Yeah, it kind of looks like maybe like you don't have a great relationships with reporters just to be like, hey, here's a news item. We need to put out a press release. I do like the aspect of having like a record, and I think to Meg's point is correct about, especially as an early stage company, you're trying to reach more investors. Like those are, maybe it's hard. Maybe you can't land an exclusive story because, it's a record that's out there and it'll get out to news outlets. That's important to like have on your site and have records. I think it's less important unless you're a public company and are required to disclose them as you get kind of bigger. Like you feel like less of a need to, but I think which you would consider, I call them like major news announcements, whether, rounds of funding, if you were a company like, you named a new CEO, like things like that are like, okay, this is really important for everyone to know. Otherwise, like, I think being judicious with them is a good idea because I don't think reporters hate being sent press releases, like there's also that. So like sending them around like, oh, we announced this news day again. Early stage companies are a little bit different, but I wouldn't say they're completely dead. I'd say like use them judiciously depending on the stage that you're at, because too many starts to be like, oh, like I've seen some companies that it's like, well, we send you this template, like, oh, we're a nominee, we won this, we won that. It's like, well, you've just sent like, 20 other companies just sent that too. Like it's everybody's hired someone every single day, like, so I think there are time and place is what I would say.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with both of them for the most part. I think we're all kind of aligned. So the way that I approach it is, one, I don't utilize for Navan. I do not utilize the wire. I find that it can have a cannibalizing effect on news, especially if it hits the news and like reporters want an individual story. That's another part of pitching, especially like big announcements like that is like, you need to find a way to give reporters their own quote unquote exclusive, which is why pre-briefings are so important, because then they're able to write their own story, right? They're able to make it their own. You lose some of that with a widely distributed press release. Now, is there a reason to do a press release? Yes, of course there is. And that is because they are financial records, right? So as they mentioned, right, when you do a company raise or do anything else, and if your C-suite is moving, do you always need to send that to the wire? Probably not. But do you need to have a record of it for something that's going to move, like for if it's considered a financial record? Yeah, that's generally speaking, like, or if you're bringing something new and innovative to the market, I definitely do a release. Now, that release sits on our website for the most part. I definitely provide it to journalists in advance, but I usually I try to couple it with a blog post because, of course, what's funny is that people will say like, I wish this press release was more exciting. And then I'm like, but that's not the function of a press release.
None of them are.
Like, you by nature, you can't use superlatives. You can't say like we're the best. Like you have to treat it like it's a financial record. That's how I would approach it, especially as you move up, right, in various stages. But product news, do you need a press release? No. And in fact, is it going back to the story equal structure, right? If what we're trying to do here, especially with product itself, is like, it's so much more effective to show than tell. It's so much more effective to show than tell. Give them the video. You can embed the embed the videos. You can take the reader along on the journey. You can add more flavor. It becomes like a narrative arc, right? It's a real story.
Mhm.
And that is maybe, if you want to get it exciting and tell a story, then that's your vehicle, right? Or you could do a podcast. You can do this. You can do that. Like there's a million other ways that you could bring that. I think that the press release itself is something specific. You want to get it on the record, right? You want it to be on the record that you did X, Y, or Z. Whether or not you utilize a wire service is another question. And that question I often find is usually going to be something like, hey, we just launched pre-seed, right? Like, and now I've got why would I use the wire? I want to blast everybody. The other thing is in Europe, this is how it works. They will not take a blog post. You have to attach or embed or, put in the press release if you are pitching journalists. That's how the media operates there, right? And so you can't deliver them, hey, here's a link to my blog post. They won't do it, right?
The Europeans are so buttoned up.
Well, I mean, so there's just different, it's not just that it depends. It's who's the audience? What is the story that you're trying to move? And I think that really what this comes down to and what you're hearing from all of us is essentially, who is the audience? Mm-hmm. Who's the audience? And then you'll find out where's the platform and what is the vehicle and what's the audience? What's the goal? Once you know those, everything, then you work back and you figure out, if the audience are these people, right? This particular group, that particular group watches, reads, listens to X. So that is where I'm going to go. A press release would be like a tree falling in the woods, right? Yep. Versus doing something else, which is geared towards a particular audience. So that's how I would do that.
If your question too, there was like, is the press release dead, and that you send out a press release and then like it gets covered, like that pretty much is
that's dead.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
That was part of the question for sure. Yeah. Okay. And I think we also just answered the first question, which is like fintech media versus mainstream media. Like I think we just came full circle. Good job, everybody.
I was looking for like a better last question. What's sort of like
I want to poor guy.
Wait, but can I just say that for Meg, I think Plaid is a great name. What I say to people is that like it stitches together your financial services. Like that's what it does. It's very, Plaid. What a great name. They stitch things together. It's Plaid. I was like, I love Plaid. I love that name.
Too.
To me, it's like quite obvious what you guys do. Yeah.
Factual. Yeah. I'd see Erin like crawling out of her skin based on the fact that we should get the fuck out of here. So we are going to do that.
Thank you to also the studio manager.
I was going to say,
By the way, it is like
thank you,
late in
Tammy.
the evening, and we so appreciate them.
Yeah,
so
thank you guys.
I'm like, no,
I know.
I'm nervous.
I'm joking. I'm joking. But thank you for hosting us.
What about what are we looking forward to next? We can end on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. What's
quick
next?
once round?
Oh, I didn't even
this
think about
year's
it yet.
Money 2020 topic. Are we going back on stage? The fans want to know.
I think so. I think it's required.
And is Zach Pray actually?
I'll let you handle that one. I'll let you handle that one.
Oh no, we want this, Zach.
Oh, good pivot. Yeah. Good pivot.
I would say in fintech, I'm really excited for where fintech is right now. Like we all know it was a rough 2 years, and I think you're seeing the markets come back now, and the companies I say this year, like who are doing things well, solving real problems like we talked about, are being rewarded, and I feel like all the people who truly believed in it and put the hard work in. And one thing we didn't talk about, but maybe we can talk about on stage, is changing plans when all of a sudden your best laid comms plan go awry because of things like the market crashes, etc., and you have to completely pivot. So staying flexible is an important thing. But anyway, I'm just excited to, as cheesy as that sounds, I'm sorry, I'm such a fintech nerd, that just for where we are in the industry now. And I think we're better for it, honestly, for what we've gone through the past couple of years.
Fuck yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think this is the year that fintech's grown up. This is the year that fintech grows up. That's how I'm thinking about it. Oh
my God, that was totally our working title. Remember that?
What?
That's one of the themes. That's one of the themes for Money 2020 US this year.
Really?
Yeah. Fintech growing up.
Oh, well, then it's good.
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it.
Fintech goes to college.
Yeah. Well, it's like I think we've even like graduated college.
Yeah.
But to your point, we have to do this again because we have to do this again before October. I think we like next time we're all in New York or next time we're all in SF and we can do it with Emily.
Yeah.
And we have to do this again.
We can do it at my place next time.
There we go.
Yeah.
Have the kids involved.
Yeah. Oh, well, not my place.
No, I know. I'm joking. I'm joking. All right. Thank you, Timmy. Thank you, everybody that stayed after. Thank you, current team. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, everyone. Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you,
Thanks, Zach.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Love you guys.
Hey, thanks for listening. If you're still listening, you're probably reaching for your phone to pick your next podcast or switch to music or just call it a day because you can't believe how much valuable information you just took in. But before you pick that next thing, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, and all that jazz. Generally scream from the rafters about how much you love Fintech Family Hour. Thank you again to our sponsor, FS Vector. And until next time, stay healthy, keep your head high, your costs low, and I love you all.